Welcome. I'm really appreciative that you're here today. When I was hired at Lexington Traditional Magnet School, I thought, my goodness, they're all magnet students. It'll be such a cinch. Piece of cake. I soon learned that I had my hands full, and I'm going to be talking about that today. Let me preface everything by saying that I have had elementary experience, middle school experience, high school experience. I taught teachers to be teachers at the University of Louisville for 3 years. And then I was a principal in 2 schools, and then I took a $30,000 pay cut to go back to middle school and teach reading. I taught reading in Franklin County Middle School for 6 years, and this is my first year at Lexington Traditional Magnet School. So, without further ado, let's begin. This is the demographics, the school demographics. The demographics I did not know about until I got there. These were the students that I was going to be working with right here. The African American, 41%. The magnet application was 65%, but the neighborhood students were 35% with 98% free and reduced lunch. The school is located in probably the most impoverished section of Lexington. Our feeder schools are Harrison and Johnson Elementary. And the 6th graders carried with them the reputation of being the most notorious of any students we ever had. This shows you the academic index, and you also see that 2003 is where it starts taking a big dip. And that's when the neighborhood students came into the magnet school. And that's when they knew they were in trouble. Because when you start going from 109 to 92, they had to step back and reevaluate. That's when our curriculum and instruction supervisor had a brainstorm. Let's hit that lowest demographic with a high impact grant. She wrote an RFP grant to the Board of Education. This is what she wanted in that. Small class size, no more than 15 in a class. Recruit highly qualified teachers. Create a team approach that for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. We had 30 6th graders, 15 7th graders, and 15 8th graders. We also had a school psychologist. The academic dean was the person who wrote the grant, so she was the one who was literally driving the bus. So we were, according to Collins' Good to Great, I was finally on the right bus, in the right seat, and she was driving it, and we were at least in the right lane. And she was keeping us from going off into the ditch. We also had a part-time counselor and the other part social worker. And reading specialist was me, and a specifically designed instruction and assessment. And I'll talk to you about that as we progress. I think that oh yes. The thing I want to talk to you about here is that a large percentage of the guardians were not really their parents. They were extended family, aunts, uncles, grandparents, aunts and uncles. It was just mixed. A large percentage of their family were incarcerated, and 3 of my students went to jail during the year, to give you some idea of what happened. 1 was for drugs, 2 were for truancy. 100% reading several years below. When I took the first test, I was shocked. I was overwhelmed. We had a high retention rate. I had 1 student who had been in 6th grade 3 years, and he was with me. The average age was 13, probably. I had 13, 14, and 15-year-olds, and I had 3 students turn 16 while they were with me, which is, well, unprecedented to me. I had never heard of anything like that. To help them with reading, they brought their driver's manuals to help me so they could help learn how to read, which was unbelievable. But to get into the program, you could not be in special education. So we're talking about non-readers who are not special ed students, okay? Before I go any further, I need to have a show of hands. How many are superintendents? Bingo, great. How many are principals? Oh, wow. How many are assistant principals? Right? How many are guidance counselors? Very good. How many are academic deans or curriculum and instruction? Very good. Good, thank you. How many are teachers? You're a teacher, good, thank you. Anyone else that I did not cover? Yes, special ed. Special ed. We can help you, yes, special ed, excellent. Anyone else? Great. At least I know what you know, so I can answer your questions as I go along. In August, I began working with LTMS as a reading specialist to improve their reading ability with the high impact grant. That's what it was called. And I knew from past experience that I would be successful with them. So I thought, I said, piece of cake. Right, okay, let's back up. Then I met the students, and they were loud, they were obnoxious, they were defiant, they were unruly, all those wonderful adjectives up there. How many of you have worked with those kind of students, seen those kind of students, disciplined those kind of students? Thank you. You know who I'm talking about. You know these kids. They'd rather be bad than be stupid, and they are hard to teach. If you look deeper, though, you saw that they were creative. You saw that they were very smart. You saw that they were streetwise and artistic and athletic and musical, all those things that really should have made them successful. Key was they couldn't read. My first impression was I had my work cut out for me. And to tell you the truth, with 35 years experience going in, I was scared to death. And I didn't mind telling anybody I had my work cut out for me, and it was, well, I had great trepidation. However, I did see a reflection of myself in there. These are the type of students that no one, absolutely no one wants in their classroom, but these are the type of students that crawl into your heart and camp out. These are the students that you will never, ever forget. These are the students who give you nightmares, but they're also the ones that give you the most rewards. And this was our results in reading. This was from Read 180. This is the success zone from here to here for the sixth graders. This is where they started. The red is where they started. The blue is where they ended. Just need you to take a little look at that. Because that was something that I knew they would progress. I didn't know that they would get this before 6 months. Seventh graders were this way. Now, the ones down here that already kind of on grade level were the ones that no one wanted in their classroom. No one. And they were on grade. They were smart. They were on grade level. But they were so outrageously disruptive that no one wanted them in their classroom. So they came in, but look how much they progressed, even after they got there. And the eighth graders were the most difficult to teach because they were the ones that had had the most failure. And they were, but even then, you can see that they're ready for high school. Now, you're here. You want to know, what do I do as an administrator to see this type of result? You want to know, does it require hours of professional development? You want to know what resources do I have to do or to purchase to support this kind of program? You were thinking, we've tried behavior modification, every new program on the block, in the net, everything. We've exhausted everything. You know you have great teachers. Superintendents, you know that. Principals, you know that. But it's Groundhog Day every day. And they get up and they burn out. Teachers burn out quickly when they have these kind of students. Our students don't make consistent, substantial gains. They go up and then they go down. They have a bad day and they fail a test. Then they get the kind of, in a cycle of failure that they don't want to try anymore. What now? We need help. And I'm thankful that you are here today because I think we've got an answer for you. How did LTMS do it? The critical factor was forming a teacher team who formed positive relationships with students and had empathy with their situations. We went in a week, maybe 2 weeks before. We just had them come in. We went to do their lockers. We had speakers come in, talk to them, and then we had one-on-one with them. We formed a relationship with them. So when they came in cold and started to act up, we were able to just quietly say, remember we talked about being more appropriate with our language? Do you know that we're not supposed to drop the F-bomb? Remember that? Okay. So we worked together as a team to address student issues. Bullying was a big one. Anger management was another. The crisis with a lot of divorce, a lot of parent incarceration. It was very difficult. But we used Marie Carbo books on tape. We used Read 180. And the results you saw on those scans, that was from the SRI, which is the Scholastic Reading Inventory. But in the past years, I've had success with Marie Carbo books on tapes, but students can listen and follow along to comprehend what they learn. Now, kids are smart, they listen to the words, and they follow along. The thing is that a student, the kind of student we were teaching, would get it. They would. But then they didn't want to do it orally. There are built-in questions about comprehension, inference, main idea. It followed the CATS test perfectly. And there was one drawback. The tapes are very deliberate pace, and they got very impatient. Now, I've also had success with Read 180. How many in here do Read 180? Good. It's excellent, and they've even upgraded now, so it's even better. It breaks down the steps for reading. It has good strategies. It has a component of spelling and context clues. However, it is very redundant, and the older students were very bored, and they wanted to click off Read 180 and go to the net and pull up something like BET or Teen Hollywood, or you get the idea. And they'd minimize it, still be listening to their music, and pretend to be on this program. The problem is that there's a built-in recording factor that I would get to find out how many minutes they'd logged on Read 180, and they were supposed to be on at 25 minutes, and it showed 0. So I knew that they were trying to get away with it. I've used both strategies in small class sizes, and I've also formed positive relationships with my students. I have a lot of empathy for them. At best, I would see students gain 100 Lexiles or 1 grade level. But I realized and I felt that that was not good enough, because 100 Lexiles or 1 grade level is not going to get them to high school and keep them from dropping out or failing miserably. This matches the results of a published study by Scholastic Read 180. And you can see that statistically significant gains, for the reading inventory. Overall, students made an average of 110 Lexiles after 1 year of Read 180. Now, you saw that some of our students were scoring in the thousands. What was 1,200? It was 1,200 from one of our students, which went from the lowest to the highest. And we're going to talk about why. But instead of an average of 110 Lexiles per year, we saw an average, just an average, of students' growth, 598 Lexiles in 6th grade, 490 Lexiles in 7th grade, and 456 Lexiles in 8th grade. Now, mind you, the 7th graders have had a lot more failure, and the 8th graders had had even more failure, which was daunting at best. The difference is the red prism glasses from Dyslexia Solutions. The irony about all this is, of course, and there's some of it going to be on a quick video that WAVE 3 TV is the house. Anyway, Lori Lyles came and did before in October and an after in March. And so she's going to be interviewing students, and you're going to see what she found, okay? And we're going to show that in a little bit. But one thing that I have to tell you, that when I was interviewed for the Lexington Traditional Magnet School job, my principal asked me, how long will this take, 2-3 months? And I said, it is immediate. It either works or it doesn't, okay? So that is what the big deal was. But another thing, one of the students said, at first what he thought was, you know when you get a pair of binoculars and you look at the binoculars and you see two different things, and as you adjust it, it comes to one picture? That's what it did for them. Another thing for me, it lifted it up and separated the words, which I really liked. And also, it looks like 3D, and sometimes where you actually see the word the way it's supposed to be and not blurry or running off the page. And some students have it very difficult. Can you imagine going through elementary school and not being able to do that? I just think that's terribly frustrating. Let's go back just a couple years at the beginning of my story. Even though this whole thing is not about me, it's how I got into the glasses. In the summer of 2005, I began to work with the Louisville doctor, Dahlem. And he had a lot of research, and he helped his son overcome dyslexia. And I learned that hundreds of other people were doing this too. So he gave me a pair to try out, okay? This was on a Saturday, okay? And I took these glasses home, and I skipped church on Sunday. And it was the first time I read 6 chapters of a book for pleasure. I never read a book for pleasure. Never read a book for pleasure. It was always something for school, because it took me 2 and 3 times to read it to get to the gist of what they were trying to say. So for me, it was huge, and I was just overwhelmed with it. We said the solution is the glasses. Dr. Dahlem invited me to come to Louisville and see the glasses and try them, because I wanted to find out if these glasses would work for me, because like his son, I am dyslexic. I hid this fact all the way through college. Well, college. I went through elementary school, middle school, and high school and didn't read. I know that sounds incredulous, but dyslexics find other ways. We think out of the box. And if you know a dyslexic, they're very creative, and they will think out of the box to answer questions that other people haven't even thought of. Now, I couldn't get into a college. No one would take me. They thought I was retarded. They thought, because my ACT and SAT scores, I mean, you're supposed to get what, 25, 26? Mine was 12. Do you know how that affects your self-esteem? Do you know how I wanted to be a teacher? I knew I would be a great teacher given the opportunity, but I hid it. I hid it for a long time. When I started taking the teaching of reading, it's like the kitty lit, and they give you the syllabus, and it's like 500 books. I sat in the row and start crying. I mean, not little cry. I mean, like ugly cry. I mean, ugly, ugly, ugly. I mean, really bad cry. And I looked at this and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail this flat. I didn't know there were little kitty books that only take you, the print is big and only takes you like a minute to read one. Well, it didn't matter to me. It was still going to be very difficult. So the teacher said, everybody go to the library except Pam McLean. That was me. And she came to me and she says, you know how to read, do you? And I said, no, I don't. And she said, okay, don't worry about the books. Don't worry about the books. I'm going to teach you. in this class I'm going to teach you. There are 25 ways to teach a kid how to read, and I learned every single one of them. I learned how to read probably in like 5 weeks because I wanted to. And I knew that if I could be in a classroom for just a little while, I could get any kid to read. Because basically they don't want to fail. No kid wants to fail. They don't get up saying, well, I'm going to fail today. They don't do that. They want to say, I'm going to try again. And they get so frustrated because they don't see what other people see, okay? I put on the glasses, and I did see spaces between words, and they didn't run off the page. They actually lifted and separated like a good bra. And then I said to Dr. Dahlin, where have you been all my life? At that time, I was 57, and I was like, where were you 55 years ago when I was trying to, learn how to read? I saw the immediate improvement immediately. I was excited about it, and everybody thought, they're skeptical. They're saying, right, this little prism's going to help you read right. It's, their thought, no way. Okay. So I told you, I hit it. I hit it all the way through my teaching. I hit it all the way through. I taught at University of Louisville to teach teachers to be teachers. How weird is that? I was a principal in 2 schools, and I hid the fact that I still had problems reading. I didn't have the prism until a couple years ago. So do you know how many times I had to read and reread? Superintendent's principals, raise your hand if you've had bunches and bunches and bunches of stuff to read. Yes. Yes, and I hit it. Guess what? When I found out that the school, it came on the paper, middle school students and high school students are failing in reading, I said, I've got to go there. My husband says, you got to be kidding me. Do you realize what a cut in pay you'll get? Rank 1 and 30 years experience at that time. And I said, yeah. We had 1 son in college and 2 more to go. They were in high school. And he said, and now you want to do this? Are you kidding me? And I said, I've got to do this. I have to put my money where my mouth is. And I have to go in and I have to prove that this is real. I've got to help these kids. And that's what it was. And I was immediately successful with them. So many middle schools and high schools are just flatlining in reading. And you know that. You see by your CAT scores, this is the hardest demographic to change. Middle schools and high schools, by the time if they can't read by middle school and high school, they fail. They drop out. Who wants to even try? And they're bad. They don't want to go to school, and they want to be kicked out. So, I digress. So, I went to Franklin County. I started a pilot program there. And the parents were supportive, and they brought the students. I gave up my Saturdays, along with these wonderful people, and I gave up Thursday nights. Volunteer, no pay. Here I take a $30,000 pay cut, and I'm working extra. How weird is that? Now, but the kids were really good, and we had an average gain of 33 months. Now, that was good, but I knew that if it was monitored more closely, and if we could have more students work in a unified atmosphere, then they would do better. But the process was frustrating, not wholeheartedly supported by the school. They thought I was nuts. That you can imagine. Let's use these glasses. Sure. And they thought I was crazy. And I might be. Limited number of students had access to the red lenses. If you went on Thursday night and Saturday, you got them. Free of charge, get them. We wanted to find out, how do they affect the kids? But there was no accommodations with lighting. I'll tell you about lighting in a minute. And the usage was not, and the glasses was not monitored, and the only time they used them was in my class. And along came LTMS. They needed me. You saw the way that the CAT scores were going down and down, and they felt like, here we go from 109 down to 93, and we are going lower and lower, and we have to stop this failure. And so to motivate these neighborhood students to ascertain their current reading level, to evaluate the students, to teach them to read, to encourage them to be positive. And that's really hard for kids that are failing. I told them, just give me Dr. Bob's glasses, and they agreed. Now, this isn't an interview. The principal's interviewing me. Can you imagine? He's interviewing me, and he says, I showed them the progress I got at Franklin County. And he says, can you replicate this? I'm thinking to myself, I'm crossing my legs, my fingers, yes. Yeah, sure I can. And I believed in the glasses, but I also believed that it was going to be hard work. We set up a meeting with Dr. Bob and the administrators. They came in, and I read with the glasses and I read without the glasses. And my principal says, we need that. We need the glasses. On the first day of school, the SRI scores came out. That's the Scholastic Reading Inventory. And I also gave the Gates McGinnity National Reading Test because I wanted to have a comparison, and they were copacetic. It was a perfect match. So I knew that I was pretty much on track. And then the dyslexic solution people came in the second day and evaluated the students. Then I calculated the pre-scores and said, what did I get myself into? That's what I was like. The 8th graders were 4 grade levels behind. 6th and 7th graders were, on an average, 3 grade levels behind. But you saw in that little where they were first, maybe 2nd grade. They were really low, really low. So you know that. And I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to have to eat my words? And the fear of failure crept on me like it did when I was in elementary school, middle school, and high school, even in college. It came over me like a heavy blanket and smothered me. And I thought, I have got to get over this. I have to go in every day and say, you're going to be great. And I kept saying, I believe in you, I believe in you. And you know, those are very positive words for those kids. And then we went to work using Read 180, Marie Carbo books on tape, and the Dahlem glasses. Wave TV came to see what we were doing, talked to the principals, and talked to the students. And we have that clip.
A Louisville veterinarian is getting calls from people around the world, though not about animal care.
They're hoping he can treat a disorder plaguing millions of people, the inability to read because of dyslexia. Medical reporter Lori Lyle is here to share more.
Yeah, you know, we first showed you these special lenses yesterday, the result of Dr. Robert Dahlem's love and concern for his dyslexic son. Well, he's convinced he's figured it out, the cause and solution. Now he just needs research and data to back it up.
No one else
When it comes to learning, Lexington Traditional Middle School is testing its title. Traditional, this reading program is not. The teacher, Pam Jackson, is dyslexic.
I took the ACTs, SATs. They were so low, they thought I was retarded. They said you can't get into college.
Some 30 years later, this 2005 National Teacher of the Year continues to challenge naysayers, using a scientifically unproven, even disputed tool in her classroom.
I dare say that other schools are going to say, I want what they've got.
What they have, aside from Pam, are special glasses.
It's a prism. It's like the prism. It's like when you first put them on, it's like a huge binocular, and it comes like that, so you can see out one big hole.
The invention of Louisville veterinarian Robert Dahlem for his own dyslexic son.
So I guess I got a little obsessive compulsive about it. It took me 8 years to finally crack it.
Finding a common thread connecting dyslexics. He says it's a problem with facial symmetry, the left eye sitting closer to the nose than the right.
This is a physics problem. This is strictly a wavelength of light problem in one eye.
Dahlem's convinced the prism corrects the wavelength, clears the path for the eyes and the brain to do their job, and over 500 people now wearing the lens are believers.
It should be told to the whole world. People should listen.
It's just amazing what he's figured out.
For people like David Durbin,
very embarrassing. Not be able to to read it correctly, then somebody laugh or something.
Now reading fluently, grades climbing, confidence soaring.
It's unlimited. I mean, you've opened up every child's life who has dyslexia.
Only problem,
We can't get a paper written. We have tried for almost 3 years now to get something documented to be accepted.
for Pam, wearing them is proof enough.
I'm a reading specialist and I read so deliberately.
And then when she put the glasses on and was able to read fluently, I said, how many students do we have out there that could have that same benefit?
So Dr. Dahlem tested 80 students in the reading program for prism measurements.
Jeremy walked into Miss Phillips' math class with new confidence. What happened to you, Spencer? As you don't look terrified for a chance.
Words that read like a biography for Devontae. In just 9 weeks, his reading level is up 5 grades.
Honestly, I think it was kind of embarrassing that I couldn't read, but now that I know that I can read, I feel better about myself.
Lexington Traditional is documenting progress through Lexile measurements, reading and comprehension testing. The average expected growth is 75 to 100 Lexiles a year.
To get more than 500 Lexiles in a 9-week period is like off the charts phenomenal. I mean, that's like a freak of nature. And now more than half our kids are there now.
They thought I was dumb. They thought I couldn't read. They thought I was slow. And I just felt like busting out crying.
But now,
at Torchy, trying not to grin, but I couldn't
words
help
come
rolling
easy.
my eyes. I can basically say they saved a life.
For the first time, these kids see hope.
You guys are smart. Know that now. Please know that.
Didn't know what you meant.
Science and testing aside,
To have a kid who will say, thank you for changing my life. Thank you for saving my life.
It's the right thing to do, and that's all I know. It's the right thing to do. And if the kids are helped with it, then they're the only ones I care about.
I'm really proud of what you did today. You guys are reading so good. I'm very proud of you. I want you to have a really good weekend. Thank you. If you can get all these things together, okay, and you can put the back books up, I need you to do them.
Now, in this first round of testing, the students averaged an increase of nearly 4 grade levels in reading. That's just a couple of months. To find out how to get the lenses, you can go to way3.com. We'll link you to Dr. Dahlem's website, or you can call Dyslexia Solutions at 502-499-2744. He's getting calls from across the country, around the world, wanting to know. He has kits that he can send out, and it is nonprofit, so it's tax deductible, the cost.
That almost draws tears to your eyes for these kids.
Do you
to
think
finally
somebody would
say,
want to do the research? Does it really work?
Well,
we'll see.
I think we'll have a story coming up on that too. I think somebody's changing their mind and going to give it a second look.
Let us know.
That's all I can
Fantastic.
say.
All right.
Thanks, Lori.
Okay, from then on, people start taking notice. What's up with this? The district reading specialist from all of Fayette County came into my classroom and watched for a couple of hours. And then we had Cindy came and they had a question and answer period where it was like an enlightenment for them, because I don't think a lot of them really understood their students. And in many cases, those reading specialists were afraid of them because they were so angry and so frustrated that they would retaliate in ways that they wanted to get kicked out of the room. The district administrator they have walkthroughs, and I have low light. I have no fluorescent lights at all. I have a lamp in every corner, and the natural light coming through the window. And so when you go by my room, it looks dark. And they'll say, this is the reading room. They'll say, it's so dark in there. What are they doing? And when you go into the room and when you come from a lighted area to a darkened area, your eyes dilate. It helps with the glasses because then it's perfect. If you can have a darkened room instead of a bright lights, what I found is these students are so sensitive to light that they can hear the minute humming sound in the fluorescent. That's something that is almost deafening to them. It's kind of like how the autistic child will go, ooh, like the sounds sometimes are just almost unbearable. And they hear that we don't even, pick up. So the darkened room. And then it's critical. It is critical. And I didn't realize that. My husband says, you're reading in the dark. And I said, I do my best work in the dark. So, this team, I was just, there are 5 men and me. I'm the 6th man. And the team was phenomenal. The reading specialist was teacher there in Georgia. I mean, and he came in for language arts. And we had a black preacher as our social studies teacher, and he was great. He looked like Mr. T, maybe about 6'5" and about 250. Huge asset for us because no one could play the race card. It was huge. And then we had a guy that was 67, called him Moses. He was just great. He'd been through everything. You couldn't put anything over on him because he was really good. But the team, we had to go to the school board and prove how the money was being spent. So they were very excited to hear, just like from October to January, what a huge progress it was. And the classroom dynamics began to shift. The more they got to read, the better they felt about themselves. The principal and assistant principal were frequent visitors. The principal used to not even come to my class. They figure, oh, you're an old dog, you're good at what you do. They never came by. And now they want to come by. You know, they work with the young teachers, the one who are in K-TIP and doing student teaching. But, you know, no one ever came to see me. Now they want to find out, what are you doing? Other teachers came just in their planning period because they had those students a year before or 2 years before if they're 8th graders. And they said those students were horrendous. How did you get them to calm down? Well, they can read now. I mean, that's a huge, one was a Latin teacher, and they said, a Latin teacher says, they did terrible in my class. Can you imagine? They can't even read English, let alone Latin. How weird is that? That's just incredulous to me. And the team leaders, and Patrice, the one who wrote the grant, would very often come in just to sit down in the I have 5 rocking chairs and a couch and a kitchen table, and so it's very homey. I felt like, you know, it needs to be comfortable. And they would come in and just sit in the rocking chair and read with them or just listen and just watch the transition between the way they acted last year and the way they're acting now. Discipline problems reduced, referrals, truancy, suspensions. Well, we did have a couple of people go to jail, but you know, that was for truancy and some things like drugs. And you know, some of these kids, you know, it's like a recovering alcoholic or somebody, you know, crack or something. You know, they get really good and they go to the 30-day recovery, and then they fall back a little bit. So I think that some of these kids actually did get to a point where they succeeded even beyond the measure that their parole officers thought they would. And you know what? They don't teach reading in jail. Attitudes changed, more positive, more self-confidence. That's the thing I notice most, is their self-confidence. And I have to tell you, right, this is not even in here, but I had some they still came out with funny things. When Lori Lyles came to visit, and she said, she was interviewing these kids, and she was pulling them out and interviewing them, and one little girl was crying. She said, she's not going to interview me. And Lori Lyles saw her crying, and she came up. She was very solicitous, and she said, well, we just picked at random. And she looked, and that girl looked around the room and said, who's random? So anyway, they said the funniest things, and they would come out with things all the time that led you to believe that they really do think differently. We ate wheat bread with peanut butter, and one little boy says, I can't eat wheat bread. It works really bad on my vowels. Attitudes changed, and it was miraculous. And then came March, and we did our last testing, and Lori Lyles came back, and this is what she had to.
It's estimated 15% of the population is dyslexic, and many in that group struggle to read their entire lives.
Last fall, we introduced you to a group of middle school students in Lexington using some special glasses to help them read. In Health Alert today, medical reporter Lori Lyles explains their progress is nothing short of miraculous.
I went from the 5th grade reading level, and I boosted to the 8th. I was like on like second grade level. It's a big jump.
6th, 7th, and 8th graders.
I think we should be shouting this from the rooftops.
80 students in all, willing participants in a study, many of them.
Reading on the second or third grade level.
And they passed with unbelievable results. In 90 days, jumping on average 3.5 reading levels.
We entered our study in January because so many kids were becoming successful that they were going on to another team.
Quote unquote graduated from our classes.
Every student.
Like on grade level or above.
And some.
They've gone from what I consider remedial to gifted.
Every school in this country should be wanting to know the magic here at LTMS.
We refer to them as the magic glasses.
Actually, they're a reading tool conjured in science.
We call it ricochet angle of deflection, or RAD lens, which also happens to be my son's initials, Robert Austin Dahlem.
Louisville veterinarian Robert Dahlem.
You did good. Let's see those choppers.
Possesses a natural passion to heal. But when his own son struggled with dyslexia, that passion turned to obsession. And the result may be the potion for literacy.
The latest research at Yale has identified the back left part of the brain as the area that's not activated for the reading folks, for the dyslexics.
He says not activated because there's a problem with facial symmetry. The left eye sitting closer to the nose than the right. Not unusual, but
it actually forms a darkness area in the inside of the back part of the right eye. So what we're doing is using a simple technique of a prism to create a bend in the light.
Activating the brain. Right now, the magic glasses are made to order.
Retired father in the basement, cranking these out.
Dad, granddad, retired engineer. They are researching ways to mass produce the lenses because despite the criticism, non-believers.
But the problem with medicine is unless they see it, it's hard for them to believe it, unless it's a lab number. But then you see some kids like that we're seeing in Lexington, and you're like, you got to get going, you got to keep going.
We just have a short-term measure, and that short-term measure is highly successful, and it just started to click for kids immediately.
Just like it clicked for their reading teacher, Pam Jackson, a dyslexic who wears the glasses.
I knew coming in they worked.
My wish, then nothing but the...
Mykola started the year reading on a 4th grade level. She advanced so much, she's moving from 7th grade directly to high school.
I feel proud of myself and confident.
Jeremy walked into Miss Phillips' math class with new confidence.
Devontae held back 2 years.
No, it's not going to happen anymore.
Jumped nearly 4 grades.
He was one of those children that some might have thought were just like unteachable.
And now wants to be a reading teacher.
Trying not to grin.
When we first met Anthony last October,
they thought I couldn't read. They thought I was slow. And I just felt like busting out crying.
That was before the magic. When they advanced him,
when my parents were there, I'm like, am I in trouble? Like, no, you just boosted up to the new team. Like, shocked. I mean, I felt like doing backflips.
Yes, it may sound like magic.
I was a skeptic at first.
I thought that at first they were pretty outlandish.
But no one here is casting spells. They just finally believe in themselves.
But if you see a student's whole life change, that's the evidence. That's the proof.
I love to read.
Lori Lyle, Wave 3 News.
To be in the position I'm in.
Fayette County Area Superintendent Michael Ernst says there are plans to purchase more glasses and to make them available to any child in the school district that needs them. For more information on the glasses, go to www.readfluent.com.
This is Devontae. Devontae started here, and this was his 3rd year in 6th grade. This is where the median point should be, and he went past that, and he went to Plato, Plato, to make up his. It was to get his, to fill in, to fill in the discrepancies. He also did a portfolio, 7th grade portfolio, because he was going to go directly from 6th grade to high school, and he got proficient. And that was unbelievable for us. Another thing I need to tell you is that we have what we call PASS test, which is a predictor on how they'll do. In the first test before, like they have it's 4 times a year, and the first time they were 25, and just before the KCCT was given, it was 99. The next, and I need to tell you that their portfolios, we had no novice. We had no novice, and we didn't have any distinguished either, but we had only 2 that were apprentice, and the rest were proficient. And the next, this is Anthony. This is the one that you saw. He went from remedial to gifted. And that, and you saw him. He was just tickled with himself. It was really exciting. I've conducted 2 studies, one in Franklin County, where they had high parental involvement, compliant, motivated students, and but the study not implemented outside the classroom. Traditional Lexington Traditional Magnet School, low parent involvement, in fact, virtual none. Low student morale and motivation, but it was a school-wide implement, and in that team, all the 6 members of our team had the glasses, and they had low light. In the high level of administrative support. And I saw the same results. By March, every student in reading was reading at or above grade level, which is what our goal was to start with. You want to know, what do I need to do as an administrator to see this type of result? Having struggling readers use the glasses and provide available or indirect light in the classroom. Does it require hours of professional development? Minimal time to explain to teachers how the rad prism, the glasses help the students perceive the written word correctly. Most of these students, I can't diagnose dyslexia. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist or whatever. I cannot do that. But I know that these students had word processing problems from the get-go. And I knew that they would work because of their word processing problems. Back to this professional development. If any of you principals or superintendents need me to come and work with any of your teachers, I would avail myself to you. I just want you to know that. What resources other than prism glasses do I have to purchase to support the program? None. 0. What you do in the classroom doesn't depend on your reading program. It doesn't depend on what you do, except that your relationship with those students and the glasses. That's huge. Oh, and time. Individual time with those students. This is my last year. I'll be 60, and I'll have taught 37 years, and I think that's plenty. And I am very excited about ending my career this way, because if I thought back in first grade that I would be teaching reading, let alone having other students be successful in reading, I wouldn't have been so frustrated and so humiliated all those years. And so I am humbled by the fact that I was honored, really honored, to work with these kids, because they actually helped me. They gave me hope for the future of literacy in Kentucky.